Alright guys, now NIO Stock, ticker symbol NIO, is an extremely controversial stock. On one hand, you have people calling it an amazing opportunity, and on the other hand, you have people calling it a scam, saying that you're going to lose all of your money. But to be fair, a lot of those negative comments were coming at times where their total market cap, non-float, because there's a difference, but their total market cap was well over $10 billion, and they had only brought in around $7 million of revenue in the first 6 months of the year. That's pretty horrible. But the thing about NIO is that you're not buying it for what they've done in the past. This is a stock that if you're buying it for their future potential. And if you're a value investor, you probably have no interest in NIO stock at all. I mean, this is a company that lost around $380 million in 2016, and then almost double that at $737 million in 2017. And they've already lost over $500 million in the first half of 2018. But despite being branded as a very speculative, high-risk stock by so many people, I mean, honestly, everywhere I look, it's just so much negativity on NIO stock. I still think that there is an enormous amount of potential for NIO, for this company. So I want to do something a little different. I want to try to take a look at it long-term and see if there is actually any potential there for it being a good long-term investment. So we're going to cover all those different things, and we're going to go over everything, and then I'll give my opinion at the very end. But I want to take an objective, non-biased, fair look at NIO, and so that's what we're going to do. Let's get started. What's up everybody, my name is Ale and welcome to my world of stocks. Now if you don't know anything about NIO, they are often compared to Tesla. They're often referred to as the Tesla of China, and the reason why is because they design, manufacture, and sell electric vehicles like the EP9 supercar and the 7-seater ES8 SUV. Now the company IPO'd back on September 12, selling AD shares on the New York Stock Exchange for $6.26 a share, which raised over $1 billion. And of that $1 billion, 40% is expected to go to R&D, 25% is expected to go to marketing, another 25% is going to their new manufacturing plant, and then the remaining 10% is being allocated as working capital. Now the stock has been extremely volatile. After jumping up an insane amount, it has now essentially crashed, coming way back down, but it's been very volatile ever since. Some days being up a huge amount, other days being down a large amount, which you can see on this chart here. But it currently trades for around $7 a share at the time of this recording. And after raising around $1 billion from their IPO, they should be sitting at around $1.5 billion in cash and around $720 million in debt. And by the way, NIO was founded back in 2014 by Bin Lee, who owns the company BitAuto, which provides content for automobiles. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But also Tencent and Baidu are both invested in NIO. Those are two very large Chinese companies, and Tencent owns around 21% of NIO. But to get a little more specific, NIO does not actually manufacture their own vehicles, at least not yet. They do have plans to build their own $650 million factory in Shanghai by 2020, and that factory will be producing their newest ET7 model, which is their first mass manufactured sedan, and they plan for the they plan for the factory to be able to pump out around 300,000 vehicles per year. But for now, they instead contract a very well-known, very reputable car manufacturer known as JAC Motors, which actually has the capacity to pump out around 120,000 NIOs every single year. Now, JAC Motors is no newcomer to building cars. They've been doing it for over 50 years. They sell cars across several continents, and they've even made vehicles for Volkswagen. And on top of that, JAC Motors is able to make 2 times more vehicles than engines, so having NIO provide the engines with other suppliers lets JAC make excess vehicles for NIO. And so the result has been that JAC has been manufacturing NIO's current ES8 SUV, and their current contract lasts for the next 5 years. Now they'll also be making their newer model, the ES6, later this year, which is their smaller 5-seater SUV that is aimed to be cheaper than the 7-seater ES8, and NIO plans on releasing a new model every single year and a model refresh every 2 years. So while NIO works on getting their new factory up and running, which should ideally help them build cars faster at a cheaper price, they have a very well-established auto manufacturer in JAC Motors to help take care of all the production for them as of right now. And that's an important thing to note, because a lot of people that are very negative on NIO say that NIO is going to face the same manufacturing problems that Tesla faced when they first started out. And even as of recent, Tesla has still been facing tons of manufacturing problems. So a lot of people are thinking that the same thing will happen with NIO, but I think that it's actually a really good thing that they're contracting Jack Motors, because they're very well established and very reputable in building cars. They have experience already, so they may not face a lot of those same problems in the meantime as as they build up their new factory. And also, don't forget that NIO makes the EP9, which is not a mass manufactured vehicle, but it is a very well-known supercar that has set many world records, oftentimes has been referred to as the fastest electric car in the world. And they've already sold 6 of them to NIO investors for $1.2 million each, and it's looking like another 10 will be sold to the public, and then more will also be made to order after that. Okay, so that's some of NIO's vehicles, but what other things does NIO offer? Well, when looking at their services, we know that NIO has Nomi, which is their artificial intelligence assistant. And again, we mentioned that Tencent and Baidu are largely invested in NIO. Well, guess whose services like music and videos are used in NIO's vehicles? Yep, Tencent and Baidu's. So again, all the people saying that Tencent and Baidu investing in NIO is no big deal and that they don't even care and that they're not doing anything with NIO, I don't think that's necessarily true. We can see that they are actually involved to some degree. And another important factor is that Nomi also assists the driver with online shopping. In fact, NIO projects that autonomous driving is going to skyrocket the in-car e-commerce market to more than double from 1.4 billion to 2.9 billion by 2022, because the general idea is that drivers in autonomous vehicles will have more freedom and more time to enjoy in-car services. And to add even more credence to that, we know that the lead founder and CEO of NIO, Bin Lee, which we talked about earlier, is actually the head of BitAuto Holdings, and they're known for providing those same in-car services like internet content and e-commerce shopping. So that's pretty crazy, right? I mean, how often do you hear these people that are negative on NIO, how often do you hear them even mention these things? And then looking at their power services, we know that customers can schedule battery swaps for fully charged ones. They can schedule pickup, charge, and drop off services. They can even schedule a mobile truck that can fuel your car to 1/3 of its capacity in only 10 minutes. And all of that can be done from the mobile smartphone application. Now, those services do seem to be very costly for NIO, but I could not get any concrete numbers. But I do know that their application does already have over 500,000 registered users, and it is continuously growing. So to me, this is sounding less and less like a random Chinese company that just sprung up out of nowhere to steal everybody's money and then go bankrupt and just disappear. I think that there's actually a lot of serious potential here, and a lot of the players that are involved aren't just here by random coincidences. I think that a lot of it seems to be connected. Alright, now I don't think it's fair to call NIO the Tesla of China, at least not yet, but it is a comparison that a lot of people have made, so let's take a look at a few of those things. Now, depending on how you feel about the quality of NIO versus Tesla, you may not agree with a lot of these comparisons, but I've never driven a Tesla or a NIO, so my opinion doesn't really count for much. But a lot of people are comparing NIO's ES8 to Tesla's Model X, and when looking at the two in China, you can see that a lot of the comparisons are very similar, yet the NIO's average price is less than half of the Tesla's. I've seen some estimates for the Model X costing as much as $170,000 right now, after Tesla had to add another $20,000 to their price because of increased tariffs, while the NIO costs less than $70,000. Now, I'm not saying that people are just gonna all of a sudden stop buying Teslas in China. I think people that can afford them will just buy them regardless of the price. But the thing about NIO is that it's just so much cheaper, so you gotta figure that there's gonna be strong demand for them. And they've even reported having over 16,000 reservations already. So the advantage of making your car domestically and then selling it domestically, avoiding tariffs, and then even benefiting from those tariffs, adding costs to your international competitors, and then even benefiting from subsidies from the Chinese government, which we'll talk about in a second, that theoretically puts NIO in a great position to capitalize on many of these benefits. Now, a concern that I do have with Tesla is that they are planning to build their third gigafactory in Shanghai, and despite it costing billions of dollars, a major pro that it's going to have is that its capacity is expected to pump out 500,000 vehicles per year. But then you also have to consider that if NIO runs into problems with their factory and their manufacturing, they can always lean on their partnership with Jack Motors to help them increase production as well. In fact, NIO has even said in the past that they are open to the idea of partnering with Jack Motors past the initial agreement. And while I think around 15% of Tesla's sales are from China, I don't see any reason why both companies can't thrive in that very large Chinese market, especially in the electric vehicle market of China. In fact, China is the world's largest electric car market. In 2017, they sold more than double the next closest competitor, which was the United States, and close to half of the sales in the entire world. And according to JD Power, that market is estimated to grow by around 40% in the coming years. But a counter argument to that is that because of all that expected growth, we are seeing a rise in competition in China. In fact, it's estimated for there to be around 300 electric car companies in China, which to me sounds like a lot of competition for NIO. But a counter to that counter argument is that I believe NIO was the first to list publicly in the US, and they are also heavily compared to Tesla in terms of technology, yet they sell for a much lower price, around half the price. So I think that they do actually have a competitive advantage over their competition in terms of capital and technology. Now, NIO is certainly not profitable, but I believe around 75% of IPOs last year were of companies that were also not profitable. And something that people often overlook is that a company tends to go public for a reason. It's to raise cash and help them get to the next level. So for all the people saying that this company shouldn't IPO or that they shouldn't even be allowed to IPO, I disagree with that. I think that it's a natural part of the way IPOs work, and I think that it's that potential growth that really incentivizes companies to go public in the first place. Now, when Tesla IPO'd, I believe they sold around 1,000 vehicles. If I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comment section, but what I find very interesting about that is that so many people are saying that NIO hasn't sold anything, that they haven't done anything, and that's not necessarily true. Based on the reports that I've read, NIO has already sold 1,600 vehicles, so that would be 600 more vehicles than Tesla. And when Tesla IPO'd, I believe their stock rose around 50% in the first day. And Tesla certainly wasn't profitable, and they certainly weren't making a mass-produced vehicle either, so why then did people invest in Tesla? Well, they didn't invest in Tesla for what they were doing at the time, they invested for their future potential. And yet to this very day, Tesla is still not profitable, yet their price trades much higher, up well over 1,000%, yet you have people still recommending the stock, but it would have been much greater to jump into Tesla at much lower prices from the beginning. Now, another thing to consider is that not only is NIO backed by Chinese giants like Tencent and Baidu, but they are also receiving support from the Chinese government. In fact, NIO is subsidized over $7,000 per car from the Chinese government, and they receive additional cuts on a localized city-by-city basis. And on top of that, you got to figure that when you want something built fast and cheap, you go to China. And on a humanitarian level, you may not like that because of the lack of unions and workers' rights, but the reality of the situation is that NIO has access to cheap labor, and if they need them to work overtime to hit production targets, which, you know, they have pretty high production targets, if they need them to work overtime to hit those targets, they can afford to do that. But still, a major concern for NIO is that they get more than 1,700 of their components from 160 different suppliers, which to me is a bit of a scary thought, because if those suppliers start giving NIO bad parts or they delay their shipments, you know that that's going to be bad news for NIO, and it is going to destroy their stock. And we also know that NIO has stated in the past that securing backup suppliers is too expensive for them to do. That's not a good thing, because that does leave them a little vulnerable to the performance of their current suppliers. So when looking at the pros, I think that the Chinese electric vehicle market is already very large, and it is only going to grow in the future. On top of that, NIO is already being backed by very large Chinese companies like Tencent and Baidu, and will likely be supported even further by the national governments as well. So from a long-term perspective, I look at NIO and I think, okay, this is a very high risk stock because they don't have a proven track record or anything that we can look at in terms of their history. But I also feel like a lot of the risks are somewhat minimized by contracting Jack Motors for manufacturing, and also having to compete in their home country of China, with future plans for expansion internationally once the company is more well established. So there's huge potential right now in China, and then they have even more potential later internationally in the future as well. And this is a stock that is trading at $7 a share. It does have the potential to be trading much higher in the future, but because they haven't been properly tested yet, most analysts and journalists and even people on YouTube are feeling like this stock is incredibly overvalued given the high market cap and very low revenue. I was even reading one report that said that Tencent only paid $2.88 for their shares. So it does look like their IPO was at a little bit of a premium, but at the same time, you got to figure, who are we to even try to compare ourselves with Tencent? I mean, you can't be demanding, the same share price as, a giant company like Tencent. But still, this is a Chinese, foreign company that I know virtually nothing about. Even with all the research I've done, I'm still, I'm at the mercy of the reports I read. I may have gotten some of these numbers wrong. I apologize if I did. It's based on the research I've done. But I still know really nothing about this company. So, to me, it's still a gamble. But because it's such an interesting company in a very, large growing market with so much potential, I may open up a small position just kind of for fun, and then once I do more research, and if I start to feel better about the company and the way that they're headed and what they're doing, then maybe I can turn it into a little bit of a bigger investment. But for right now, I just can't say that it's a good long-term investment because there is a lot of speculation still there. But who cares what I think? It really matters what you guys think. So make sure you leave me a comment down below. Let me know how you feel about this stock. Try to keep it nice and friendly. Don't get into any fights out there. But let me know how you feel. I'm very curious. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. If you hate me, you never want to see me again, hit the dislike button. And make sure you're subscribed. And I'll catch you in the next video. Have a wonderful, beautiful day. And take care. Bye-bye.